Good evening and welcome to the Capitol Report on NTD Television. I'm Steve Lance. Coming up, the Vice President visiting National Guard troops deployed in the nation's capital, where he gives some of the latest updates and statistics on the city's crackdown on crime. Our White House correspondent shares her firsthand experience with us about crime in the city. And Israeli forces beginning the first phase of their planned takeover of Gaza. Meantime, Israel approving plans for a new Israeli settlement in the West Bank. In May, Taiwan have misplayed its hand with President Trump. Former State Department official warns that the island could start to be seen as more of a liability. Insights into how Taiwan can better navigate U.S. foreign policy reset. And on our panel tonight, a federal judge hits pause on Texas's plan to display the 10 Commandments in public schools. Plus, President Trump says America's museums focusing too much on failure and not enough on success. Chip Franklin and Katie Zacharia join us to discuss.
This is Capitol Report, live from our global headquarters in our nation's capital. Here's Steve Lance.
And good evening. Vice President JD Vance visiting National Guard troops right here in Washington, D.C., while the city's entering its 9th day of the federal takeover of law enforcement. U.S. Marshal Service now offering $500 rewards for tips leading to arrests throughout the city. NTD correspondent Jason Blair reports.
We don't have to live like this. We do not have to allow our cities to be taken over by violence and disorder and by chaos.
Vice President JD Vance, along with Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, went to Union Station in Washington, D.C. to visit some of the hundreds of National Guard troops deployed in D.C. for the current crackdown on crime.
We've seen a 35% reduction in violent crime. We've seen over a 50% reduction in robberies. We are seeing really substantial effects. So I want to come here, highlight what they're doing, say thank you in person.
U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi says that as of Wednesday morning, 550 arrests have been made in Washington, D.C. since August 12th, when the federalization of law enforcement began in the city. U.S. Marshals Service put out a notice for $500 rewards for information leading to arrests in D.C. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said in Tuesday's press briefing that a large amount of arrests that have been made since the D.C. crime sweep began have been in the two most dangerous areas of the city.
Nearly half of all the non-illegal alien-related arrests have occurred in wards 7 and 8 in the District of Columbia, where we know, there's the highest rate of crime.
There are also unconfirmed reports that the Department of Justice is investigating alleged manipulation of D.C.'s crime stats. President Trump did say last week that his administration is looking into it.
They are under investigation right now. They are giving us phony crime stats, just like they gave other stats in the financial world.
D.C. Police Union Chairman Greg Pemberton told Fox News that pressure to omit crime data is one of the main complaints the union gets from their members.
They respond to the scenes of these violent crimes, and inevitably you'll have a captain or a commander or sometimes a lieutenant show up on the scene and advise them to take a report for a lesser offense.
Reporting from Washington, D.C., Jason Blair, NTD News.
And beyond those statistics, crime in D.C. has taken a real toll on many people's lives. One of those, unfortunately, happens to be one of our very own, our White House correspondent, Iris Tao, who was personally robbed at gunpoint and pistol whipped in Washington just 2 years ago. She's in studio with us now. Iris, thanks so much for joining us. If you could first walk us through what happened to you personally.
Sure. So it was over 2 years ago. I was living near the wharf, or in between the wharf and the Navy Yard area in DC, which supposedly isn't that dangerous, but it was an 8:30 a.m. Saturday morning when I walked out of an apartment when a young guy with a black ski mask covering everything but his eyes just suddenly walked up and pointed a gun at my face and be like, "Give me your phone." So before I could even react, he took it away from my jacket and demanded also my wallet, my laptop, and even the password to my phone. And actually all of which I refused to give, but he smacked me in the face, in the cheek with his handgun before running away. And unfortunately, throughout the past 2.5 years, I've not heard back from the DC police about what exactly happened afterwards. Was he ever caught? That guy was actually, he actually fobbed into an apartment building right next to mine, which made me even more concerned afterwards. And honestly, throughout the past 2.5 years, I've not been feeling safe in DC walking at night or really just during the day as well. I've been Ubering almost every day home, even though I just live very, close to the office, relatively speaking. But that fear has really planted in myself, and it's been, part of my memory and journey in DC that I've been sharing with everyone as well.
That's really unfortunate and terrible. I do personally remember it when it happened. And I mean, just to say, this is at 8 in the morning on a Saturday in a relatively, what you would say, a safe part of Washington. So you, after experiencing this personally roughly 2 years ago, and now seeing, real action being taken, there's a lot of debate about it. Is it worth it? Did crime go down? As somebody who's experienced a violent crime, pistol whipped, a gun pointed in your face in broad daylight, and robbed, what's your assessment of the way things stand right now?
So, of course, as a White House reporter, I've been covering crime statistics in D.C. over the past few years. Officially, the numbers, for example, do say that violent crime has come down, actually down 35% from its peak back in 2023. City officials are also telling us that the crime in D.C. has had a nearly 30-year low. But alternatively, you also got to look at the lived experience, for example, including mine. And last year alone, there were over 29,000 crimes reported in D.C., and that's including, for example, over 3,000 violent offenses, over 2,000 robberies, and over 1,000 assaults with a dangerous weapon. So that's thousands of other D.C. residents who have went through the same thing as I did, and their families and friends probably equally traumatized by the experience they hear from their close family member. Once you hear something like that happening so close to someone that's probably going to determine what you think about the crime situation in D.C., not the numbers published on the city's website. So I think on the one hand, we've really got to look at the real human toll behind the statistics published online. But on the other hand, we're also going to dig into the data to see what it's telling us. For example, there are some debates right now over whether some crime data has been manipulated or underreported in the city. But there's one category, though, that's really hard to be underreported or be manipulated, and that is the homicide rate, because each data point there really represents a life lost. And we know that in D.C., for example, there were 27 people killed per 100,000 residents here, and that data point is actually more than double from just a decade ago. And just in the past year, we have seen horrific incidents, including, for example, a 2-year-old girl sitting in a car after July 4th fireworks with her family, getting shot and killed. Another 21-year-old Capitol Hill intern also killed walking the street, and another man shot just a few blocks from the White House hours after President Trump announced his crackdown. So these are real examples happening near us in the city, and that's hard to overlook.
It truly is. So, with the crackdown on crime underway, we're going to see coming up in another segment where Sam Wong was out there in Anacostia, one of the most dangerous neighborhoods, talking to the folks out there about how they're feeling. What are you seeing? Are the numbers out yet to talk about if things are improving or not?
So first of all, as a DC resident who have gone through something like that, right now, just seeing the National Guard troops and also the trucks, the military trucks outside Union Station every day makes me feel safer. Honestly, I've been, every time I walk by Union Station, seeing just homeless people on the street makes me feel unsafe, because you never know who's going to walk up and potentially point a gun at you and try to rob you. And that's at least me personally. But also data, we have seen some improvement already, actually, according to the DC Police Union. Since President Trump started his crackdown action nearly 2 weeks ago, the data has shown that robbery is now down 46%, carjacking down 83%, and also violent crime down 22%. So, of course, it remains to be seen long term or in the next few weeks how that kind of data will continue to trend, but at least I think even one case down is a big achievement as someone who has experienced something like that.
I think that's what most DC residents, including myself, are asking. Is it, you can feel things are changing, but is it here to stay? Lastly, you did just publish an op-ed, an opinion editorial about your experience in detail. In one of your previous responses just now, you sort of outlined how this has a real toll on people. Was that one of the biggest reasons that you decided to write this?
So, of course, it has been a few years. Although I've told my friends, I've not really come public about it personally, but just seeing everything right now, seeing the changes happening, of course, seeing people talking about it, debating the numbers especially, makes me feel an urge to come out to at least share my personal experience. Of course, not to take a side at whether the data are accurate or whether the White House approach is fully approved by the DC residents, but at least to share my story, to really try to tell the public that behind those numbers, there are real living, DC residents here who might have suffered one of those incidents themselves.
NTD's White House correspondent, Iris Tao, we're grateful that you are safe and still here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing. And in the Middle East, Israeli forces have officially started the first phase of their plan to take over Gaza City. Meantime, the Israeli government giving the final approval to build a new settlement just east of Jerusalem. NTD's Jason Perry brings us an update.
Israel released footage on Wednesday of terrorists fleeing as an Israeli tank approached them in the Gaza Strip. Many of them attempted to take cover in this tunnel entrance, but Israel struck the area before one of the terrorists was able to make it inside. Israel also released an infographic showing where they established security zones along the Gaza Strip border. And after Operation Gideon's Chariots, they increased that security zone, and Israel now controls about 75% of the Gaza Strip. A spokesman for the Israel Defense Forces said that Operation Gideon's Chariots enabled them to increase operations in Gaza's largest city.
We will deepen the damage to Hamas in Gaza City, a stronghold of governmental and military terror for the terrorist organization. We are not waiting. We have begun the preliminary actions, and already now, IDF troops are holding the outskirts of Gaza City.
On Wednesday, Israel said they were calling up 60,000 reservists to report for duty, and that they were extending current orders for 20,000 reservists who are already deployed. Meanwhile, the Israeli government gave the final approval for plans to begin construction of a new settlement east of Jerusalem. Thousands of homes are expected to be built in an area that would nearly divide the West Bank into two parts. An Israeli official said the new settlement would, quote, bury the idea of a Palestinian state. A representative of the Bedouin community in the West Bank said they received demolition orders for buildings in the area about a week ago. And he called on the international community to prevent Israel from establishing the new settlement in the West Bank. And in another development, the U.S. Department of State issued further sanctions against 2 judges and 2 deputy prosecutors belonging to the International Criminal Court, which is supported by the United Nations. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said, quote, the court is a national security threat that has been an instrument for lawfare against the United States and for our close ally, Israel. The decision comes after the court issued arrest warrants for Israeli officials over the war in the Gaza Strip. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, in a post on X, praised the U.S. decision and accused the court of conducting a smear campaign against Israel and the Israel Defense Forces. On the other hand, the United Nations said the sanctions, quote, undermine the foundation of international justice. Jason Perry, NTD News.
And a federal court today in Texas blocking a new law requiring public schools to display the 10 Commandments in every classroom. The measure was set to take effect in September until several families filing a lawsuit against that law last month. The judge ruling that the law likely violates the First Amendment. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton defending the law, saying the 10 Commandments remind students about, quote, the values that guide responsible citizenship. Paxton has vowed to appeal the court's decision. And Hurricane Erin continues to track north along the East Coast. While the center remains offshore, it's already causing dangerous conditions along the coastline. Officials are preparing emergency response teams, urging residents to stay aware. NTD's Christina Corona has more.
Erin has now strengthened into a Category 2 hurricane with winds of 110 miles per hour, tracking north and running almost parallel to the East Coast. North Carolina Governor Josh Stein gave an update Wednesday.
The storm remains dangerous and is already impacting lots of people here in North Carolina. Folks on the coast need to take care. Based on the current forecast, we are anticipating coastal flooding from massive waves, tropical storm force winds, and tidal and storm surge for much of the state shoreline, especially the Outer Banks, from this evening through Thursday.
He says life-threatening rip currents will last most of the week and no one should be in the ocean. Local emergencies have been declared in Currituck, Dare, and Hyde counties, with mandatory evacuations for Ocracoke and Hatteras.
If you've been asked to evacuate, please do so now, before conditions deteriorate and roads become impassable. Do not drive around barricades and do not drive through flooded waters.
Governor Stein has issued a statewide emergency order activating state and local response teams.
We have already pre-positioned 3 swiftwater rescue teams and 200 National Guard troops to various locations on the coast, along with boats, high-clearance vehicles, and aircraft.
Hurricane Erin is roughly 335 miles off the Carolinas. A monitoring buoy about 200 miles northwest of Erin Center reported waves near 30 feet. Officials say the storm is forecast to remain offshore but may fluctuate in strength over the next day or so. The National Hurricane Center says swells from Erin will also impact Bermuda, producing rough surf and dangerous rip currents through the end of the week. Officials warn those conditions could also spread north toward Atlantic Canada as the storm tracks offshore this weekend. Christina Corona, NTD News.
In just a little more than a week into the federal takeover of Washington, D.C.'s police force, the Trump administration unveiling data showing a large number of arrests happening in high-crime neighborhoods. So what do those residents in those areas make of the crackdown? NTD's Sam Wong was out in one of D.C.'s most high-crime neighborhoods to hear from the people.
You feel safe being out here?
Oh, absolutely. You know, other than the presence of the law enforcement, everything is, you know, as it always has been.
There has not been any altercations as it was in the past.
We hear shooting almost every other night, sometimes every week. You know, sometimes. I mean, when I say shooting, I mean they shooting hard. Broad daylight, sometime at nighttime mostly, but you do hear it in the daytime though.
Have you noticed an increase of law enforcement presence around here?
Yes, sir. I have noticed a lot. It's a more increase, but it's a shame that it takes Donald Trump to bring all these people in for all the police to come outside and do their jobs actually.
This is actually my first experience with the law enforcement. You know, man, it's cool. That doesn't bother me, them being around here, you know. If you're doing what you're supposed to do, guess what? Hey, they're doing the right thing.
What are your thoughts on President Trump's decision to send in the National Guards and federalize the D.C. police force?
I felt as though he should have met with the constituents first, the elected official first, to hear exactly what is needed to make the nation's capital safe. However, it does send a signal to anyone who is thinking about going back to the day of altercations and aggravating the citizens of the District of Columbia, the nation's capital.
Do you think this area in general calls for some level of police patrolling here?
Yes, I really do. I do believe that, but as far as the excessiveness of it, I don't agree with that at all. I think it's effective. I mean, as I was following the news and noticed that they have making more arrests and obtaining more guns, which is a good thing.
Do you feel safe as of now, knowing that there's like FBI agents and law enforcement here around the metro?
Yeah, they should have been done that a long time ago. Especially we got the military involved as well. You know, you can really handle business, man. Because military ain't gonna play with you.
Coming up, President Trump now saying Putin and Zelensky will meet without him, but he'll step back in if he's needed. The White House also confirming a trilateral summit may follow. And former senior State Department advisor Christian Whiten says President Trump has ushered in a new world order, and Taiwan isn't keeping up. We'll hear from him when we return.